shining sea.
Do 6 minutes, yeah.
Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Jerem. Milton.
Here.
Pauls. Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the pledge and invocation by Councilmember Amy Milton.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to take a moment this morning to remember Martin Luther King. We will be celebrating his honor next Monday. We will not have council on Tuesday. And I see that we have a number of students here. Welcome to the Omaha City Council. And I'm glad you're here because I think that all too often we think of Martin Luther King as somebody we study in history. But he actually had a dream, and I would encourage you.
And I think the best way to honor his memory would be to try and go out and do some kind of service project. And I know everybody, I think, has the day off school next Monday. But UNO is actually offering a chance for you to go do a service project. And I believe you can meet I believe they're meeting at North High School at 8 a.m. on Monday. And if you can't make that service project, I would just encourage you to do something nice for one another and understand that every single person has some kind of value. And if we can recognize that and do something nice for somebody else, I truly believe that we could help make Martin Luther King's dream come true. So I would encourage you all to do that. Thank you.
City Clerk certified publication of the Daily Record on January 10th. Notice report council regular city council meeting January 14th, 2014. And current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the white binder on the east wall of the chambers.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Omaha City Council. This meeting is conducted in public and by law may only address the topics listed on the published agenda. The council will hear testimony but will not engage in debate with issues with the public at this meeting. During testimony, it's not appropriate to applaud or convey disapproval. These actions can only detract from the formal decorum of the meeting. At this time, please turn off or mute any electronic device. And I want to give our students a second chance to wave at the camera here in a second so they can see it tonight by allowing Councilman Jerem to recognize them as they're from a school in his district.
Yes, we'd like to welcome the students from Norris Junior High and to the Omaha City Council. And thank you. If you could stand up and be recognized again. It was unexpected that you get double billed today, once by Councilmember Melton and the invocation. And now you get recognized again. We also want to thank the mayor's office. I think Rod Edwards is here, who's been hosting the students all day, and we appreciate you coming, and welcome to the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Reconsideration, item number 5 is the motion by Councilmember Franklin Thompson to reconsider resolution number 54, adopted as amended January 7, 2014, being the resolution that a portion of the claim of the drover for a refund of restaurant and drinking places occupation tax is denied, with a roll call on January 28, 2014.
Move to approve.
Well, that's a motion, yeah.
Councilmember Milton.
Before she does that, we could say it lost for lack of a second.
I just wanted to take one moment because I really struggled with this issue, because I believe that the fair thing to do would be to refund taxes that were overpaid by one of our taxpayers or businesses in the city of Omaha. And I really do feel that that would be the fair thing to do. Unfortunately, I believe that we're governed by what I actually consider an unfair statute. The problem is the Nebraska revised statute, which is section 14806, actually dictates and states that the city council does not have the jurisdiction, does not have the power, does not have the authority or the discretion to refund the money, even if we wanted to. So any member of this council that would vote to refund that money, I believe, would be in violation of state statute, which is actually a violation of the law. We did all take an oath of office when we became council members, and we took an oath to uphold the law. And I know usually it's judges that are put in this position. And if I was sitting as a district court judge, whether I thought something was fair or not, I would be required to follow the law and follow the statute. And I think that's, unfortunately, the position that the council has been put in today. A clear reading of the statute actually mentions the mayor and the council specifically in the statute, and tells us that only a court could award this money back, and that we do not have the power to do so. And so it's almost with great disappointment that I have to say we couldn't vote for this. So I think there would be no point in reconsidering this next week, because we do not have the ability to grant or order our finance department to pay this overpayment and taxes back. So hopefully, if somebody feels that this statute is truly unfair, then I think they need to contact one of our fine state senators and ask them to amend this statute in the future and allow the city council or the mayor's office to have the discretion to do so. But right now, we just simply don't have the discretion. So with that, and I'm hoping, Mr. Kratz, did I say anything that was untrue?
You're fine. Very.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is Tom Mumgard here?
Yes.
Tom Mumgard, Deputy City Attorney.
Mr. Mumgard, it's been established that the council and the mayor cannot refund this money. Your interpretation of the current statutes, does it say that we cannot give credit for next year's allotment?
Yes, I also think that that's not permissible, because the ordinance that imposes the taxes would compel everybody that's uniform across the board and has no provision for any crediting of any debt that is owed to any of the taxpayers. So, no, I don't think you can give a credit. Now, as an administrative bookkeeping thing, because what we have here is payment is a payment that needs to flow back and then be repaid to the city. As a bookkeeping matter, you might be able to balance the books by not cutting the checks, but that's different than reducing somebody's future tax to offset what they can't recover in this way. I do not think the city can do that.
So going forward, the only way to fix this then is to go through the state legislature? If this council wanted to fix what we thought was not fair?
If this council wanted to change the law, yes, it would have to be done by the legislature.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Pauls.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Since we're sort of laying this on the backs of the legislature, what we need to do, if you're really serious about this, you need to go back and see when that statute was passed and see what the intent is or was. That's the curious thing about this, even though we may be in disagreement with what the statute is saying, because we cannot vote for or against this. We need to find out what the intent of the legislature, and sometimes you are surprised. But somebody had to go back and read the transcript of the discussion that was on the floor, because it may not, the intent of it actually may not be what actually the law says. So if you're that curious, I'm suggesting some people go back and read the intent when that law was passed in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights. Next item.
Zoning ordinance on final reading and planning board attachments. Item number 6, ordinance to rezone property located at 3304 Burt Street from R3 to R7A. Planning board and planning department recommend approval. 7 is ordinance to approve a planned unit development overlay district. A, planning board and planning department recommend approval. We have a request to lay this over 2 weeks for publication and continuing the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Thompson? Gurnett? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton? Pauls? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's laid over 2 weeks, 7-0.
No. Items passed. There was no public hearing.
Pursuant to City Council Rules 7H, due to no meeting being held January 21st, agenda item numbers 8 through 9 shall be laid over 3 weeks to February 4th for publication and public hearing. Liquor, item number 10, Omaha Practice Tee Golf Academy, 5414 North 72nd Street, Class I liquor license, new application, new location. You have a request for an amendment to correct the address, and we have communications opposing.
Public hearing on item number 10 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents?
He's here.
Oh, proponent? Yeah, please come down.
Hi, I'm the new owner of the Omaha Practice Tee. I just took ownership in May 2013.
Your name and address, please.
Jonathan Culliver, 8735 Lakeview Drive, Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm just recently took over ownership of the Practice Tee, and I wasn't aware about the proponents' letters and the issues before with not being a good neighbor to the Practice Tee, and I'm addressing those issues moving forward with new ownership.
And how are you addressing those issues?
Well, one in a few of the letters that were sent was because there was a fence that LPPD tore down 2 years ago. Not a fence, but a netting that LPPD tore down a few years ago, and it was balls were getting into people's yards and hitting their property. And the previous owner didn't address the issue, so it was something that has been lingering on.
So this isn't my district, and I did see the letters that were submitted. I don't know if there's any opponents here today. They'll have a chance to talk if there is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're opposed to the liquor license, but I think it was primarily because of the issues you're describing, which were, some nets that used to be there that are no longer there, and therefore balls hitting their property, and otherwise being concerned about the driving range not having been a great neighbor to them in the past. So are you saying you'd be pursuing the netting again to make sure that doesn't happen, or what measures are you going to take to...
Well, that was part of the plan. I mean, the property was left in disarray, just getting it up to speed for the few 6 months that I had possession of it so far. And then now, to get the nets to figure out, because there is some netting that was tore down, to replace those nets and put them back up this coming season. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll replace the nets?
Yep.
And you'll have that conversation with the neighbors? And
Yep, I plan to send letters out, and I know the few houses that are on that back, I believe it's the east side of the driving range, to go and talk to the neighbors and just let them know that's the plan.
Okay.
That plan to be a good neighbor.
I think that'd be a good step, and I appreciate you're a new neighbor and you're going to take care of the property. And I don't object to the liquor license. In fact, the city golf course next door has a liquor license too. But I would like to see you do the things you just described, and these do come back each year for approval. And if for some reason they haven't been resolved, I would maybe have a different opinion than I will today. But I want to give you the chance as a new owner to do that and work with the neighbors, and it sounds like you will, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other proponents today that want to speak? Are there any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed.
Motion to approve the amendment.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett? Gray? Jerem?
Yes.
Milton? Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes, the amendment's approved. We also have a light from Councilman Gurnett.
Yeah. Go ahead. It's already passed.
Okay. That's withdrawn.
As amended.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Gurnett?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Milton?
Yes.
Pauls?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Adopted as amended, 7-0. Item number 11 is Peanut Paula, 2575 South 171st Court, Casa liquor license application, new location.
Public hearing on item number 11 is today. Are there any proponents? Please come down.
This is the art gallery.
Hi, I'm Stacy Dale.
John Dale,
And your address?
20740 Timberlake Drive, Elkhorn.
Thank you. You have a statement or just answer questions? Or
Just answer questions.
okay, sounds good. Any other proponents here today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Thompson. Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Adopted 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause an item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from consent agenda shall be taken up by City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were moved, unless otherwise provided by City Council rules of order.
The public hearings on agenda items number 12 through 16 were held on January 7th.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Thompson. Gurnett. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all passed 7-0. On the others, we need to remove item 18 and item 21.
The public hearings on agenda items number 17, 19, 20, 22, and 27 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, and who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Seeing none, public hearings are closed.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Thompson. Gurnett. Gray. Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
17, 19, 20, 22 through 27 are all adopted 7-0. Now, item number 18 is a resolution that the contract with Hawkins Construction Company for OPW 51875 CSO, Schedule B1 being the Missouri River Wastewater Treatment Plant, combined sewer overflow improvements is hereby approved.
Public hearing on item number 18 is today. Proponents, please.
President, members of the City Council, Bob Stubbe, Public Works. Before you today is a resolution to improve a contract to make improvements down at the city's Missouri River wastewater treatment plant. Those improvements consist of increasing our ability to, for plant capacity, in addition to the ability to treat the increased wet weather flows that will be coming to that particular facility. This particular project is a project that's in compliance with the CSO policy of the Clean Water Act. It is also a project that is included in the city's CSO long-term control plan that has been approved by the Department of Environmental Quality and also the EPA back in 2010. The funding for this particular project will come from, majority of it anyway, about $40 million, will come from a loan that the city received from the state that's administered by the Department of Environmental Quality. It's got a rate of 2%. It's a 20-year payback, and that 2% rate that we're getting from the state is about 100 to 150 basis points lower than what the rate would be on a typical revenue bond that the city would have to issue for a project of this size. I have with me today two individuals that are very actively involved. One is Mike Ahrens. Mike is the plant manager at the Missouri River Wastewater Treatment Plant, and Jim Tyler is essentially our program lead for the city that is daily involved in the CSO program. What I'm going to do is have Mike come up here and kind of walk through a little bit about what those improvements are that make up this particular project. And maybe just to, before they do that, I want to mention the fact that this is Schedule B. Schedule A is ongoing at this point in time. There's a contractor currently working at site Those particular improvements are related to the South Omaha industrial area, essentially to take all of those waste from the South Omaha industrial area and confine it into one, convey it to the plant, and also treat it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike and have him go through the actual improvements that are being done at that plant.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Ahrens, the Missouri River Wastewater Treatment Plant Manager for the Public Works Department. To give a brief overview of this large project for the treatment facility improvements, and I'll make an attempt to point to the lower west portion of the facility. The implant lift station is a pump station, and that the improvements to that facility will include pump replacement and an increase in capacity of that lift station, as well as the upgrade of all the electrical controls for that pump station. The clarifier complex in light green there, the 8 round facilities there, will see equipment replacement and upgrades of controls and gate structures associated with the equipment in there. It will be upgrades to expand those to the capacity of the ultimate treatment capacity of the primary portion of the treatment facility, and also include ventilation and odor control upgrades to expand odor control to all 8 of the clarifiers at the treatment facility. Currently there are 4 of those clarifiers that are odor controlled. Additionally, there will be one large facility in the dark green, almost showing up as gray there, that is a replacement of the 2 existing 50-year-old inlet structures at the treatment facility. It includes state-of-the-art equipment for screening to remove trash, bags, debris, leaves, tires, things like that come down the combined sewer system. And then and the screens are there to protect other equipment in the facility, followed by grit removal and removal of sand, gravel, grindings from garbage disposals and the likes that come into the facility. And the grit removal equipment is capable of removal from flow rates, low flows like our average flow in the facility of 25 million gallons per day, up to a flow of about 150 million gallons per day sustained peak hour in the facility. Associated with those improvements will be the addition of a new odor control biofilter. It's really the state of the science and the technology for odor control and wastewater treatment. Biofilters can remove a range of odorous compounds from odors there, not just rotten egg or hydrogen sulfide smell, but additional odorous compounds that come in as wastewater comes into a treatment facility. And they also don't utilize some of the other chemicals that we use in some of our odor control units. And so as we go into the future, they'll lower the operating cost of that type of an odor control treatment unit. Lastly, the long, thin line along the roadway in the plant is a seepage control barrier. It is a staging point for us to erect flood control measures that are also part of this contract. During 2011, we put an earthen berm up at the treatment plant to protect the $150 million worth of assets that are down there in this portion of the facility from floodwaters from the Missouri River. We want the ability to do so in the future, and we've got a core approved plan to place a seepage barrier there, where then we can put temporary measures up that can be rapidly deployed in case they're needed if Missouri River levels increase in the future. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. One other thing to mention is that this particular project will last about 2.5 years, so there is a long duration to this particular project. You'll see on there also that we've identified B2 improvements. Those are also improvements that will come in the near future, but they're currently under evaluation. And once we complete that, it'll go into design, and then there'll be another contract coming before you for those particular improvements. With that, we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks. Are there any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Gurnett.
Mike, both of us Just restate your name for the record.
Mike Ahrens, Missouri River Treatment Plant Manager, Public Works Department.
We both sit on the South Omaha Environmental Task Force, and as you well know, and probably a few of my colleagues know, that odor control has been a sizable concern, not only for me, but a lot of people in the district, especially those that live down on the 13th Street corridor. The concern from those folks, as is with the Environmental Task Force, are there, you said what caught my attention was the state-of-the-art for odor control. Explain to me a little bit, because when I visited Boston's wastewater treatment plant out on the island, and another one down in Nevada and Arizona, at that particular time, the state-of-the-art odor control was done by carbon filters. Has that been a significant change to what you're planning on installing with these new modifications?
Carbon filter systems are excellent forms of odor control. They're very expensive, and they're expensive to operate, and they require the replacement or the refurbishment of the carbon that's in those units. They're good at removing a variety of different odors. A biofilter is a biological treatment process that uses a humid, odorous airstream as the source of constantly feeding that filter and the organisms that grow from that relatively specific odorous airstream. And a biofilter has the ability to remove a variety of odors and efficiently, and do so without having to have media replaced or materials replaced, so that O&M costs, operation and maintenance costs of a biofilter over the long term are actually lower than any other odor control technology that is in place today. And I'll add, we did construct a biofilter in 2005 at our Monroe Street station, and are very happy with the performance of that biofilter. We did so precisely for the reason of knowing if it would perform to the standards that the public and your constituents and our citizens of South Omaha are looking for us to meet. And we're doing the same type of technology here and elsewhere in the facility as we move into the future.
Increasing the 25 million to 150, the gallons that come into the plant every day. What was the time frame again for completion? I think the question that I'm going to receive as I get out there, the build-up process for this, and the potential for more complaints to come in. So my question would be twofold. What's the time span for this to be completed? I know that CSO is going to go out to 2024. So is this project going to be that long? And will we still have the same reporting procedures available to the general public for specific complaints such as odor?
Absolutely. There were a number of questions in there. This project in itself, this portion of the project is about a 3-year construction schedule, and at the end of it, or at a point in time in it, we'll be capable of taking 150 million gallons peak hour flow through the facility during a wet weather event. Wet weather events freshen sewer systems, and they also are not necessarily taking place in high odor conditions that would otherwise be there during drought conditions in a wastewater treatment facility. The odor control is capable of all of the demands of those peak loads to the system, and it's designed to handle those significant increases in flows and loads as we move forward. Final Schedule B2 improvements to the facility will be taking place after that point in time over several more years, ultimately to meet the goals of the whole CSO treatment program by, I believe, 2027. So we're committed to odor control, and you know that we take all of those complaints seriously, and the 444-4919 number is still the main number for odor complaints or other complaints associated with the sewer system or anywhere in the city of Omaha.
Just two more, if I may, Mr. President. When the 4919 number is activated with a complaint, there is a tracking device in place. So encouraging people to call when they smell an odor is advantageous to long-term controls and repairs and improvements to the system. Is that kind of on target?
Absolutely. All of the controls and systems that we have to control the processes in the facility still don't do everything that a nose can do out in the system. We'd much rather have a call to alert us to conditions in the system so that we can investigate it and eliminate those situations as quickly as possible.
I would agree. Nothing better than a nosy neighbor. And lastly, the eventual goal through this whole wastewater treatment process, this is what it's going to look like when it goes back into the river. Is that about right?
I should think something similar to that.
Something similar to that.
Just don't drink it, right?
So I would encourage my colleagues to take that tour that has been offered. It's quite an operation.
Yes, sir. Water quality improvement is our final goal, and the water quality in the Missouri River is our goal. And we're available for tours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, Mike. I noticed this is just under $58 million for this project, and I see a local contractor is the low bidder, Hawkins Construction. So we obviously know that there's a lot of local construction workers that'll be working down in your facility to construct these new improvements. Just wondered if you'll be adding any full-time positions as the plant expands to accommodate this additional flow, or are we doing it with existing personnel?
We do have an overall staffing plan for the CSO long-term control plan, and we have added 2 positions in preparation for the implementation of the industrial headworks inlet and screening process to the facility, as well as these processes in the facility. So maintenance staff as well as operating staff, so that we can operate them full-time. In the future, there are additional equipment operators and people for hauling screenings and grit material associated with improvements elsewhere in the system that will be added in subsequent budget years.
We heard this will be an almost 3-year project. When does it start, actually?
Do we have this?
March.
Yeah.
I believe March.
Contractor should be notice to proceed sometime in March, depending upon the approval of the contract by council.
And then does the city have a point person who's responsible for overseeing this particular project?
Yeah, the city's project manager on the project will be Rick Murch. He's an engineer located at the Missouri River Treatment Plant, and has been responsible for other CSO and plant improvements projects in the past.
I'm just trying to recall, have there been any bigger CSO projects to date? Mr. Stubbe, you're shaking your head no.
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. I got to believe, other than potentially when some of the other treatment plants were constructed, that this probably would be one of the largest public works projects specifically related to this one that you're voting on today.
Well, I want to commend you for seeking out alternative funding sources that can save the taxpayers. I mean, 1.5% of interest rates on $40 million that you've acquired by finding the state loan process rather than going right to bonds to general obligation bonds or the rate bonds that we would do for the sewer project at 3.5%. You're getting this money for 2%. So I want to applaud you and your department for being creative there and actually saving some big dollars for taxpayers of Omaha.
Thank you. Just maybe one other thing to add on to that this is a state program, so the funds that we do get are monies from the state, and the monies that we pay back in go back into that state fund, potentially that could eventually be used by the city of Omaha or other communities throughout the state. So it is a pretty good program.
Thank you. I had a few remarks too, and I think we have another light as well. I also want to thank you for giving this presentation today. Council members felt when we had a project of this magnitude on a consent agenda that we should be having a discussion in our public meeting about what this does and the $58 million price tag and how it's going to be paid for and what the benefit will be. And I do intend to take you up on the tour. I think it's important we all understand how this works and what this does. But the fact remains it's not discretionary, right? We have to do this project at the $58 million level.
Yeah, this, again, as I mentioned previously, is that this essentially complies with the CSO policy that's part of the Clean Water Act. And we put together this program, essentially our long-term control plan, to address combined sewer overflows that were permitted by the state to operate that particular facility, and there are things that we need to do in order to be able to maintain those permits. So this project was identified within that long-term control plan that was approved by the Department of Environmental Quality and also the EPA.
Okay. And then a question for Mr. Herring, too, who I see is here. And we talked a little bit this morning in pre-council about the financial aspect of this, because it is major. And even though this is a $58 million project, which is major, but the entire program is $2 to $3 billion, and we're still struggling as a community with that structurally and how to pay for that as a metropolitan area. And although we have some assistance with the state revolving loan in this particular project, that still has to get paid back over a period of 20 years. And we don't currently have the bonding approval or haven't currently sold the bonds to do that. So even this project is part of the ongoing cost of that $2 to $3 billion unfunded federal mandate we're dealing with. So in that regard, I know there's been discussion of the next consideration of rate increases that might need to happen as it pertains to this and then the ongoing program. But I know there's been some reanalysis by the mayor, the administration, of if that needs to occur and when that needs to occur. Could you discuss that a little bit and the status of that?
Yeah, Al Herrick, City Finance Department. Yeah, right now the mayor and the administration is considering a rate increase to fund this project. Everybody is on board that a rate increase is necessary to continue funding this project. The timeline when this rate will be considered and presented to the City Council hasn't quite yet been determined. We plan to sell bonds probably this summer, and at that time we will definitely need a rate increase ordinance approved in order to talk to the rating agency, so we can confirm to them and the future bondholders that we can pay for the cost of this project down the road. So that's kind of the time frame we have to do this in.
Okay. And do we know what that is yet, or is that something you're still putting together?
It's going to. It has the final legislative schedule hasn't been determined by the mayor yet, but I anticipate in the next couple of months it'll be presented to the City Council. And
that'll be a multiple year.
Yeah. So the last time we did it, I believe it was a 5-year increase. It went from 09 through 14, and then this new rate increase, I believe, will be about a 4 or 5 year increase too, from 15 on.
Okay. Mr. Gannett.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to take another moment here. I know we've done this in the past, but Mr. Stubbe, again, thank you and your team for saving that plant during the flood. You did an outstanding job. I watched that operation, and that berm building was just unbelievable how you did that. Thank you again.
And then I would also add, before we end public hearing, that this is an incredibly challenging project for our community, as we all know. And when we talk about a rate ordinance of that nature, I think it's very concerning for ratepayers and homeowners. And to that extent, we've been down in Lincoln, I know all of us, talking with our state senators about this project, and there are some bills introduced this year that we hope will be helpful with that discussion, and we sure encourage them to help us with that situation, and we stand ready to do whatever we can to help pass some of that legislation this year to help our ratepayers.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Milton.
Yes.
Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Adopted 7-0. Item number 21 is resolution that the contract with Municipal Pipe Tool Company for OPW 52562RN is hereby approved. We have a request from Public Works to allow them to withdraw this document.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Gray. Jerem. Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes.
Withdrawn 7-0. Resolutions, item number 28, resolution that the final offer attached as Exhibit A to the resolution is the city's final offer for calendar year December 23rd, 2012 through December 22nd, 2013 for the wages, employee benefits, and overall compensation practices for the members of the AFL-CIO Local 251.
Public hearing on item number 28 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Milton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Adopted 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7F, agenda items number 29 through 31 should be laid over 3 weeks for publication and public hearing. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the third reading and public hearing on agenda items number 32 through 40 shall be held on January 28th. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the third reading on agenda items number 41 through 59 shall be held on January 28th. The public hearing on these items are today. Ordinances on second reading, Planning Board attachments. Item 41, ordinance vacating a segment of the east-west alley north of N Street and east of 131st Street. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on item number 41 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 42, ordinance declaring necessity of voluntary acquisition of property identified as 509 North 77th Street for the purpose of the Coal Creek Flood Mitigation Project.
Public hearing on item number 42 is today. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 43, ordinance to accept the bid from Nebraska Best for ground maintenance of city right-of-ways for a 2-year period.
Public hearing on item number 43 is today. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 44, ordinance to approve a 3-year agreement between the city and the Nebraska Humane Society for Animal Control Services for the years 2014 through 2016.
Public hearing on item number 44 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 45, ordinance to approve an agreement between the city and the University of Nebraska at Omaha on behalf of the Consortium for Crime and Justice Research to provide funding for proactive analysis of local crime problems and to actively assist law enforcement in developing a continuing proactive plan for gun crime reduction.
Public hearing on item number 45 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 46, ordinance to approve an agreement between the city and Nebraska State Patrol to authorize funding to reduce gun and gang violence in Omaha and neighboring communities.
Public hearing on item number 46 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 47 and 48 will take together. 47 is ordinance to accept the National League of Cities grant to develop formal business plan for city-led health benefit outreach campaign aimed at enrolling eligible children and families in Medicare, Medicaid, and the Children's Health Insurance Program. And 48 is ordinance to approve an agreement with Touchstone Strategic Consultants to develop the formal business plan.
Public hearing on items number 47 and 48 are today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item number 49, ordinance to approve an agreement with Domestic Violence Council, the Women's Center for Advancement, Heartland Family Services, to combat domestic violence in the Omaha metropolitan area.
Public hearing on item number 49 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item number 50 is ordinance to repeal Omaha Municipal Code Section 15-30 imposing conditions on the issuance of a Class J retail liquor licenses.
Public hearing on item number 50 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
We'll take items 51 through 55. They're all authorizing bond issues. 51 is ordinance to provide the City Council of the City of Omaha be authorized to issue and sell from time to time but not later than December 31st, 2022 without further vote of the electorate general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $47,375 million for the purpose of providing funding for payment for construction of roads, highways, park, bridges, to provide that the submission of this proposal to the qualified electors of the City of Omaha for their approval or rejection at a special election to be held May 13th, 2014. 52 is to provide for $13,616,000 for construction improvements, equipment for sewers. 53 is to provide $14,511,000 for the purpose of providing funds for various parks and recreation improvement projects. And 54 is to provide funds of $10,272,000 for the purpose of providing funding for the payment of cost of acquisition, construction improvements, equipment for police buildings and facilities, fire stations, branch libraries, park maintenance facilities, auditorium support facilities, public works storage facilities, and citywide building renovation and replacements. All of these will be on the May 13th special city election.
Public hearings on items number 51 through 50.
Did I read 55? One more. 55 is $6,250,000 for city fire department, including fire vehicles and equipment and necessary plans.
Yeah, they wouldn't want to live out the
fire, would we?
Public safety obligation bonds, would we?
That's right.
Public hearings on items number 51 through 55 are today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearings closed. Mr. Herring, if you would come up, please.
Al Herring, Finance Department.
Thank you. So we've talked about this in pre-council and city council briefings a little bit, but I think it's worthwhile also to talk about this in today's public meeting, and for voters that will eventually have to consider this on the ballot. And that is the notion that these bonds are needed just to sustain the current infrastructure needs we have planned for the city over the next 6 years, and currently in our capital improvement plan. And without them, we couldn't do the basic things we're talking about in terms of public safety and roads and parks and all the things that are entailed in these 5 items. But the question always comes up from a financial perspective, too. How are we doing as a city on our debt levels? And we're still having our challenges with our debt levels. We've done a chart for probably 10 years now, Al, that talks about how the debt level is high, but it's getting better over the period of time with our debt reduction. But that becomes pretty thin still in years 2015 and 2016, right?
Yeah, right now we're at kind of the low trough of the curve right now with our fund balance to pay these bonds back. And as we go forward and valuations grow and our debt actually is going to come down, our GO debt over the next 5 to 20 years, we're paying off more debt now than we're taking out, and it's probably about a $10 million difference. So as that comes out, that'll help our borrowing authority down the road, and will certainly keep tax rate low on our debt service funds.
And these bonds, we've been receiving a very competitive bond rate,
Yeah.
as we were just discussing, 2% and 3%, some of the best we've ever had.
Yeah, we're still a very marketable city when it comes to issuing bonds. We have the second highest bond rating for these bonds of what they give. Out of all the cities that issue bonds, we're still in the top 15% with our bond rating. So our bonds are very favorable. We have no trouble selling them. Investors like them, and they're very secure instruments.
And we've had a downgrade recently, but that hasn't impacted that at this juncture. And should there be further downgrades, you're not concerned this could potentially lead to a tax increase?
Again, we're still AA. They consider anything down to A still investment grade bonds, and I don't expect us to be downgraded at all the next few years, we should maintain a AA rating. Again, what the rating agencies like to see is how much of our debt is paid off within 10 years, and our GO debt, every year that figure gets better and better. In the next 10 years, we'll pay off 70% of our GO debt. And again, we don't have balloon payments in the end or anything like that, and the rating agencies like that, and also prospective investors.
And so by the years, say 2020, 2022, we can start addressing more of our infrastructure needs.
That's right. I think, within those years, we get past 2020, we'll be able to at least keep up with inflation at that time. I think we'll be able to increase our issuances by at least $5 million a year, and still not have to increase our tax levies to repay those bonds. It'll get better as time goes on.
Thanks. I thought it was important to have that conversation today.
Exactly right.
This is important when it goes to the ballot, and I know I'll be supportive because it does fund our basic infrastructure needs as we manage our debt, and does so without a tax increase. And I think that's important.
Yeah, this is just to provide basic city services and to maintain and keep the assets that we have in place up in good working condition.
Great. Thank you. No further lights. Next item.
Item 56, ordinance to amend sections in Chapter 22 and 23 of the Municipal Code to reflect changes negotiated between the City of Omaha and the Omaha Police Management Association for the years 2013 and 2014.
Public hearing on item number 57 is correct, right?
56.
56 is today. Public hearing starts now. Mr. McQueen, proponents, please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Mark McQueen. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Baird Holm, and I served as the city's lead negotiator during the police management negotiations that led to the tentative agreement you're being asked to consider now. I wanted to very quickly provide you with a summary, an overview of what that agreement includes. It's a 2-year deal dating backwards to the start of fiscal year 2013, so we're a year into the contract now, and it would run to the end of this current fiscal year. The most significant cost item within the deal, as is typical, is in the area of wages. And it's important to understand one context that we were attempting to, or problem that we were attempting to overcome through our wage-related negotiations. That particular problem involved a circumstance where the captains on the force were to the tune of almost 50% of the incumbents out-earning the deputy chiefs in the force. In other words, the captains with their base rate and their overtime earnings were actually earning more than the deputy chiefs. There's another problem that we were attempting to overcome, and that is the current incumbent, the chief, actually took a promotion in his first year on the job because of the wage structure and the wage scales that were in place. His pay increase was less than $100 for his first year on the job. So we had some cleanup work to do in the area of wages, and that influenced what we ultimately arrived at in terms of a settlement. The ultimate settlement structured a wage program which lengthened the period of time by which you would advance from a starting pay to your top pay at both the deputy chief and the chief level. The current system has them achieve their top-out pay in a year and a half. The proposed system would have them achieve their top-out pay after 4.5 years. That was important to us because we're trying to incent people to stay in the position, and we ran into some circumstances historically where people accepted the higher paying position, topped out and retired and went on to a different income producing position for a different employer. We're trying to stop that, as we did with fire management a little over a year ago. We also created a gap. In other words, we wanted a distinct gap between the captain's pay and the deputy chief's pay, so we took an average of the captain's pay and we made the starting pay for deputy chiefs 5% higher than the average captain's pay. Now, based on 2012 numbers, because we were negotiating during 2013 based on the earnings that had occurred in 2012. We also wanted a gap between the chief and the deputy chiefs, and we created a circumstance where the lowest paying step, or the entry level step for a chief, was 10% higher than the highest paid deputy chief. That's the system that we created to eliminate and overcome some of those wage problems that I described historically. Once you're in the pay grade, you advance from one step to the next step at a rate of 2%. And other than your 6-month probationary increase, the step increases take place at annual interviews. That's how we arrived at the deal. Essentially, it's about $22,000 in wage-related cost in 2013. In 2014, it's approximately the same amount. If you want to speak to percentages, it's approximately, the total wage package is approximately 3.35% in 2013, and it's 3% on the button in 2014. In 2013, the chief, through his management of the department, and the department overall, through its good practices, ran well under budget. So this is not a cost to the city, it's actually a savings to the city in consideration with how the budget has been structured. There's one unique aspect to our wage-related settlement that you should be aware of, and that is we currently have an incumbent in the drop program that's a part of the police command staff, and our agreement provided that that drop incumbent and future drop participants during this 2-year phase, this 2-year contract, are not eligible for pay increases. And because they're not eligible for pay increases, the pension system would not reap the benefit of those increased contributions that are the result of pay increases to drop participants that might have otherwise been the case. And I'll talk for a minute here, or in a minute here, about additional pension contributions that this agreement includes. I wanted to mention this drop aspect because it is the source of some concern, at least with one of the trustees for the pension fund, and perhaps more. And I know about this because we've had an opportunity, Mr. Hansen, Officer Hansen and I, to discuss this issue, and he's concerned about the lower pension contributions that may result from a drop participant not enjoying these pay increases. I can talk to you about the specific numbers in that regard, but our sense was, given the savings to the city in the 2013 budget versus the pension reform that I'm about to describe to you, which will in the long term benefit the pension fund, it was the right thing to do and the smart thing to do, and the alternative being to grant the wage increase to this current drop participant dramatically changes the cost of this settlement and heavily influenced our decision making. And I should say that the police command group approved this tentative agreement in spite of the fact that at least one of them and maybe two are potentially future drop participants in addition to the current drop participant. So that's the summary of the wage-related piece of the agreement. In the pension area, we negotiated a 1% increase in the employees' contributions to the pension fund beginning in 2014. That's consistent with the increase that we negotiated with fire management not so long ago. So we're getting increased pension contributions in that area, and more significantly, like the fire department as a whole, we negotiated pension terms which reduces the overall maximum benefit that future hires will receive in their pension from 75%, its current level, to 65%. It's a very significant change. Now, actuarially and statistically, it's not going to result in great things happening to the pension fund as a result of this small group, but it would result in great things happening to the pension fund if that same change is negotiated with the rank-and-file police officers. And of course, as you know, we'll be negotiating with the rank-and-file police officers in 2014. In addition, like the fire department, we increased the length of service required in order to achieve the maximum pension benefit from its current level of 25 years to 30 years. So that's why I mentioned earlier, while we're talking about some loss of income to the pension as a result of drop participants not being eligible for pay increases, we've coupled that with some very significant pension-related reform that is going to benefit the pension in the long term and the short term, particularly if these types of reforms are considered by the rank and file. Those are the major items, wages and pension, as you might expect. There's some minor incidental items included in this agreement that I should make mention of. In the area of tuition reimbursement for police management, we tried to mirror the rank and file benefit. That means they would be eligible for tuition reimbursement for up to 3 credit hours per semester for master's degree courses that are deemed job-related and approved by the chief. And the reimbursement rate would be at UNO master's degree course rates or the actual cost, whichever is lower. So that's sort of a new benefit, pretty insignificant in the overall scope of things, but it mirrors what's already in place for the rank and file police officers. We added an educational incentive pay. There's currently educational incentive pay for master's degree. There is no current educational incentive pay for a PhD from an approved college, so we added a $25 per pay period incentive for anyone with a PhD. We do have one current incumbent with a PhD. And last but not least, we eliminated an equipment reimbursement benefit that currently exists in the contract. Police command staff are currently reimbursed for their equipment purchases to the tune of $553 per year. That happens to mirror what's currently in place with the rank and file. But once you get to police command staff, you don't have the same equipment-related needs and need to purchase. So we eliminated that particular benefit, and that's, a net savings to the city of about $2,500, which should be taken into consideration in the overall scope of this deal. So there you have the details. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If you don't have any questions, I would just say to you that the mayor and the chief's staff, with one exception, very much would like to see this contract approved.
Thank you. I had one question for you, Mr. McQueen. I thought I might have seen a light there, but I'll start. I don't think you mentioned this, but I think this is true. Doesn't this agreement also then mirror the fire agreement that was passed in the respect that it reduces the maximum benefit for future hires from 75% to 65% on the pension?
Exactly correct. Very significant change.
Yeah, it is a significant addition to the contract, and also for future hires, 25 years to 30 years for that maximum.
Correct.
Benefit. And all police management is currently already on civilian health care.
That's correct. They're exactly where we want them to be in terms of their health insurance coverage and financial obligations, so we didn't make any changes to there. We're achieving the one city, one plan goal, policy goal that the city's had for some time there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other proponents today? Mr. Hanson.
Aaron Hanson, 505 South 15th Street, representing myself as an elected trustee on the Omaha Police and Fire Retirement System. I struggled initially with the concept of whether I would testify as a proponent or an opponent based on my opposition to one small facet of this tentative agreement. At the end of the day, I decided that it would send the wrong message not to testify as a proponent. I give the mayor and the police management bargaining team and Mr. McQueen a lot of credit for sticking to it and working hard and coming to a tentative agreement here. My concern specifically focuses on the wage freeze concept for the drop participants. My concern focuses on essentially two things. We designed this drop with the intent of not only being cost neutral, but with the intent hopefully of being very cost positive. As an example, in this last year, where if we were close to our target benchmark for our investment benchmark, the S&P 500, the S&P 500 index funds returned 29% last year. That's 29%, hopefully, if we're somewhere near there, that we made on those drop assets during that time. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to have anyone here think that I'm an actuary. I'm not. I have presented a memo to each of you with some of my initial calculations of which cause me concern, and I'm not going to say that there is or isn't some offset, either partial or total, when it comes to the additional 1% pension contribution or the reduction of future pensions, which will be experienced 25 to 30 years down the road. But as a trustee, I would have liked to see an actuarial analysis of it. But once I look past the dollars and cents of it, one thing that I can say, as a student of unintended consequences, someone who was sitting on a negotiating team in 2004, when the city made a conscious decision with the bargaining groups to disincentivize longevity in an attempt to save money in real-time budget years, that put us in a perilous position for the 08 downturn. And there is a butterfly effect when it comes to pensions, because monies that we save in real time in the city budget cannot be simply overlaid onto money lost by the pension fund, because that money is exponentially grown over years, not just 1 year, 2 year savings in budget year terms for the city. So what I would ask is, I'd be happy to sit down individually or in groups with any of you. I would like you to take a closer look at the wage freeze for the drop participants, as I believe it is an unintended regression back to a mindset that got us in trouble or started us down a rough road in 2004. But again, I'm a proponent of this contract. I think we have a fantastic command staff. I do want to see it pass. I do want to see them get a fair wage and benefit package. But one thing I promised my constituents when I was elected is that if I saw something that I was afraid would have unintended consequences on the pension fund, that I would speak up, because I have a different role now. And that's one last thing I'll say is, now as someone who's been a member of a public board for 2 years, I want to thank you, because I understand now, I get a deeper appreciation of the time and work and commitment that you have to put in, because I'm on one of those boards in the city as well, and that's why I'm voicing my concern to you at this time. I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Please come down.
Good afternoon. Dennis Sexton, 13445 Crier Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the Omaha Police Officers Association as their treasurer. The specific opposition in this case is to note our objection to any wage freeze for drop participants. Regarding the particulars of the rest of the management contract, that's not my purpose in being here today. So that was my intention for being here on the record, to make that opposition known.
Thank you. Are there any other opponents today? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. No lights. Next item.
Item number 57, orders to approve and authorize a contract with Metro Technical Community College area to provide a 5-year agreement for EMS training.
Public hearing on item number 57 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. Bernie Kanger, Interim Fire Chief, Omaha Fire Department, 1516 Jackson Street. What you have before you is a multi-year, 5-year contract between the Omaha Fire Department and Metropolitan Community College. This is an opportunity for us to realize some cost efficiencies. We are contracting our EMS service out to Metro in terms of teaching our basic life support, advanced life support, and initial paramedic training. This is something that has been done in the fire department in the past. Around 2008, we took back the training component and started to do it ourselves. And that had some unintended consequences and some roadblocks that we kind of overcame earlier this year. When I became the interim fire chief, one of the things that surfaced initially was our EMS training program, and we were trying to come up with a more consistent better way and more efficient way to deliver the service. So we decided to put out a request for proposal. We had two bidders that submitted their packages. One was Creighton University, the other one was Metropolitan Community College. After thorough analysis with our team and numerous discussions with both vendors to work out some of the items of question within the RFP, we've selected Metropolitan Community College to move forward as our contractor for EMS service delivery within the city of Omaha. The cost savings that we're going to realize is significant. For the Omaha Fire Department, our personnel costs alone last year to teach EMS training was around $675,000. As we estimate right now, the contract with Metropolitan Community College for delivery in 2014, we estimate that'll be around $264,000. So there's a significant cost savings to the city and our organization. In addition to the cost savings, we believe that we're going to be given a more consistent delivery of service. We've got professional educators that are going to undertake the process of training the Omaha firefighters in advanced life support and the basic medical care, as well as we're going to be able to capture the entire strength of the Metropolitan Community College program. They've got, I believe, 4 full-time instructors, 23 adjunct instructors. That's a wealth of knowledge and instructors that we just simply can't provide. While most of the members of the Omaha Fire Department are very good paramedics, we're not educators. And truly, with the level of regulations now through the state and the national level with regards to delivering advanced life support and basic life support training, having a professional education service deliver that for the Omaha Fire Department, I think is the best way to go. And I'll be here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any other proponents today?
Hi, I'm Mary Jane Trumper, 5306 Izzard Street, Omaha. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my friends at Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. I'm here to support contracting with Metropolitan Community College for this EMS training. The reason I have a little bit of knowledge, I'm a laboratory manager by profession, Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology, so I've been on the receiving end of a lot of inspections as well as being an inspector for accreditation agencies. So I have been inspected by state and federal agencies in my role as a lab manager. And when the HHS had come to audit the fire department, their EMS services, I had nothing but empathy and sympathy for the process because I know how difficult it is, the documentation, in addition to the actual training. And I think that the results of that HHS audit didn't necessarily mean that things weren't being done right, but in the eyes of a government inspector, if it's not documented, then you haven't done it. And that's unfair, but that's the way it typically is. So I'm not going to repeat myself or repeat a lot of what Chief Kanger said, because he and I had a lot of the same thoughts. I would like to say that I do think that an academic environment for training is the best way to go. You have that consistency, as he said. You have the departmental resources that are available. Obviously, the cost savings to the taxpayer. I would have some thoughts about the contract considerations, and this is probably documented somewhere, but I didn't see anything in this resolution. But I think you have to be very explicit about your expectations for training and documentation with these groups, with the Metro Community College. You have to also be explicit about the need for them to maintain their accreditation and standards if you have a 5-year contract. And then I would also ask, I didn't see any information related to continuing education and how that would be handled. And my understanding is with EMS that they have to undergo continuing education, if not annually, biannually. I don't know exactly what it is, but how is that going to be handled? And then in conclusion, I just think that it's a highly specialized field, EMS, and best handled and with that consistency in an academic environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Jerem.
Yes, if I could have the chief come back down. when I looked at this, I thought, well, this must be one of those things that the chief has said he's committed to do in order to try to achieve budgetary savings where he can, so he can keep things like Med Unit 3 in service longer. And here we have almost a $400,000 savings that can be achieved in a budget year, which will allow Med Unit 3 to stay in service potentially longer, to do things like he has creatively to put, at times, Med Unit 2 and Truck Engine 2 back into service from our downtown station, things that we've lost due to budget cuts and trying to make things work. So just ask you, Chief, is this among the things you're trying to do under your watch so that we can actually afford the best services out on the street under the budget constraints that you've been given?
Councilman, I'll be very honest, 2014 is going to be exceptionally tight. This change was needed for a number of reasons. One, based on our contract, we're allowed to have a certain number of individuals working in our bureau. 37 individuals is what we're allowed. Under the old model, what took place in 2013 and the result of the tentative agreement that was passed just a few short weeks ago with regards to scaling back our paramedic component, the individuals that we had teaching the paramedic course, we had 5 individuals in the bureau that were outside of that number of 37. They weren't necessarily funded for. They're not funded in 2014. And quite honestly, if we had not outsourced, or once this passes, hopefully in a couple of weeks, there would not be enough money to support us doing the training ourselves. This was an essential thing that had to be done. Just talking about the cost savings, we had $675,000 in personnel costs. Those aren't in the 2014 budget. The amount that was contracted for, or budgeted for, I'm sorry, in 2014 for contract services of this kind, Metro did come in slightly below what we had budgeted for. So doing this program keeps us on track to attempt to hit that 90.6, but it is going, we're watching it every single day. It's going to be a very, very tight year for us.
Well, I want to thank you for all you're doing and continue to try to provide the services that, that people say they're not excess. They're, I think I saw in the year that Med 2 was taken out of service, it made almost 2,500 runs, and most days it sits idle today. So that's a lot of EMS calls for service that are being backfilled from other parts of the city. So whatever you can continue to do to try to achieve the goal of keeping Med 3 and sometimes Med 2 as tough as that's looking to be, I appreciate it.
And if I could, to answer the lady's comments previously, in our RFP we do have language in there that mandates that our contractor will maintain their accreditation throughout the life of the agreement, which is required in order to teach paramedic training. Also, all of our continuing education is built into that, to the contract that we're presenting to the council. All of the continuing ed is in there as well. And just to kind of defend the Omaha Fire Department, following that state audit where we failed, I believe, 7 out of 9 areas, the individuals in the EMS training staff worked very hard and cooperatively with the state of Nebraska, and we were able to be reevaluated a short time later, and we passed every single element that we had a failing rate before. We are going to maintain our state training agency status, which is outside of what Metro is going to provide for us. So by passing or successfully completing all of those substandard areas that the state had identified, it allows us to maintain our state training agency status. So we have the ability at some time in the future to continue to train our own people if we decide to go that course. The one area that we are not going to pursue is initial paramedic training, and Metro is going to take that over as well as our continuing ed for the life of this contract.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Chief, I'm assuming when you said we have a $400,000 savings, that's between when you did it yourself versus now Metro doing it. Is that correct?
The difference in cost between us doing it and Metro doing it is around $400,000. What was actually budgeted is in line with what Metro's contract came in at.
Okay, and then the second question I have is, what was the difference between the Creighton RFP and then the Metro?
Creighton's RFP came in at about $160,000 to $170,000 more.
More,
Yes.
okay. And you're okay with the fact that Creighton has a lot of expertise, but you're okay that Metro can match what Creighton could do?
Absolutely. Both agencies are accredited through the accrediting agency that does that for initial paramedic training. In our analysis of both organizations, both of them have a pass rate for their paramedic students that's above the national average. So I'm very confident that Metro will be able to deliver the type of service that we're looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 58 is ordinance to amend the ordinances established in the Business Improvement District 6875 for the purpose of reducing the assessments for single-family residential property so that it will be assessed at 50% of the assessed value to more accurately reflect how the properties are especially benefited from the improvements to the district.
Public hearing on item number 58 is today. Proponents, please. Ms. Keel.
Hello, I'm Shelley Keel, 319 South 53rd Street, I manage the Business Improvement District, and I'm here just if you have some questions. What we're doing is reducing the residential assessment to 50%. What it does is it gives you a chance to cut taxes if you would like. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other proponents here today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. And thank you, Ms. Gill, for your work on the Benson Business Improvement District. Next item.
Item 59, ordinance amending the ordinances which establish the Dundee Business Improvement Districts for the purpose of removing parcel 674 North 50th Street from those parcels that will be assessed for streetscape improvements and maintenance, as a property owner receives no special benefits for the streetscape improvements, with the remainder of such ordinance be unchanged.
Public hearing on item number 59 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the third reading and public hearing on agenda items number 60 shall be held on February 4th, 2014. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the second reading and public hearing on agenda items number 61 through 64 shall be held on January 28th, 2014. Chairman of the Board of Equalization reports approval of their plans of assessment with adjustments and corrections made at the regular meeting held January 7th. We need a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Milton.
Yes.
Pauls.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion adjourned.
Roll call.
Thompson. Gurnett.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem.
Yes.
Milton. Pauls. Mr. President.
Yes. Thank you.
323.
From sea to shining